Welcome to Let's Talk Petty. We're not petty, but we love talking about it.
What's it?
Petty.
You threw everybody off with that introduction. I'm Andrew.
I'm Kate.
I knew where you were going with it, but we may have just lost a whole bunch of listeners now.
Oh, a whole bunch. They're like, I'm out of here.
They got used to what we do every single time, and now they're gone.
Darn it. Still worth it.
It was worth losing people over?
Yep.
All right, well, hopefully we get more people with this one anyway. So we have an episode that I've researched, and it is about a woman named Elizabeth Packard.
Elizabeth Packard.
Any idea who she is?
She is the person that Michael Scott sent that email to by accident. The photo of Jan Packard.
You mean packaging?
Yeah. That's who she is.
Well, no.
Oh. I can't believe I'm wrong.
And I don't think his character is loosely based on this lady in the slightest. Which,
You never know.
as we get talking about her, you'll find out why.
All right. Who is she? I'm intrigued.
So the title of this episode, or what it's going to be about, is Elizabeth Packard. And this is going to be a little different because normally we do episodes where it's one person versus another person.
Yeah.
But this is Elizabeth Packard versus men and insane asylums.
Okay, wait. I think I might know a little bit about her,
Okay.
but continue. Or do you want me to guess?
Just take a guess.
Was she a journalist?
No.
Darn
She
it.
did write books.
Because there was a journalist that went undercover into insane asylums because
She wrote.
it's so crazy. It was so crazy.
She wrote well. She was in there. She was interviewing people, and it wasn't the reason she went in there.
Oh, okay.
But she did end up writing books, and we'll talk about all the things that she did.
Did she write for a newspaper at all?
Maybe later in life, but not for this.
Okay.
No, she got. You'll find out why she went there, and it was a different time back then.
It was a different time.
So this was in the 1800s,
Okay.
early to mid 1800s, and these were, to put it very loosely, a very rough time for women.
That is putting it very loosely.
So in the 1800s, women could not own property.
Mm-hmm.
If she did have to work and made any money, she didn't get to pocket any of that money. All of it had to go to her husband. She had no right to claim any of the money that she made.
What if she wasn't married?
Well, then obviously she could keep it.
Oh, okay.
But if she was by herself on her own, but nobody lived like that back then. Everyone got married for the most part.
Oh, okay.
So if they had a husband, their husband got all their money they made. They basically had to beg and plead to get any.
That seems fair.
Yep. They couldn't sign contracts, which means, they couldn't own things that they had to sign for. They couldn't vote.
Mm-hmm.
And they also didn't have rights to their kids.
Oh. They only birthed them, so that makes sense.
They birthed them, and then their husbands had complete control and custody of the children from the time they were born.
Seems fair.
And I don't use it loosely, I don't mean to use this in the wrong way, because there's no comparison to the way slavery was. But
yeah.
When you look at everything, women were basically just slaves, just not thought of poorly back at that time.
Well, I mean, that's when I did my episode with Thomas Jefferson. I mean, yeah. Look at how he thought.
Not comparing women to slaves, because they obviously went through it worse.
Yeah.
But
because they were brought over here against their will, but
they basically were slaves to their husbands.
Yeah, because it's not like they were doing all of this. Oh, I'm so happy I get to have to birth these children for you and give you all my money.
You'll see why that when we get talking about it and get into the story, you'll see why they were happy, because I think a lot of them just pretended to be happy back then.
Yeah.
For a reason we'll talk about. And then, of course, since she's taking on the insane asylums, they were very popular at that time.
What, so insane asylums?
It was a normal thing for people to get involuntarily admitted to insane asylums.
It's funny that you're talking about this, because one of the podcasts I was listening to this morning was talking about how that is just a different time.
Mm-hmm.
Like they would shut people away in insane asylums because they'd rather do that than admit that they were related to somebody who they thought was cuckoo.
Right.
Which you're cuckoo for everything back then.
Yeah, and you could get admitted there for anything
Yeah.
involuntarily, not at yourself. Like anybody could say, hey, we're bringing this person in. But the difference was if you were a man, you'd get a trial.
Oh,
So
but not if you're a woman.
if you were a man, you'd get a trial and the judge or the jury would say, yeah, you're insane. You need to go in, or no, you're fine. But for a woman, she could get put into an insane asylum, especially a wife. She could get put in for anything. Like involuntarily, like if he didn't like her that day, he could be like, I'm not happy with you. We're taking you to the insane asylum. And she would have to go.
I don't like you today.
No trial. They're in.
That's awful.
If he didn't like her cooking, she made burn dinner, send her to the insane asylum.
So if he's being petty, he can take her to the insane asylum and say, she burnt my dinner.
Didn't like
I
the
don't
way
even
her
know
clothes.
where this marriage is going.
Didn't like the way her clothes looked. Didn't like the way she looked at him, for whatever reason. So women basically just had to be on their best behavior back then, or they would be sent to the to the asylums.
That's
And they
why
were
they're pretending to be
overflowing.
happy.
They were overflowing
Well,
with
yeah.
women. Because people could just send their wives there or daughters for any reason.
It's awful.
It was awful. And this is why she fought so hard against it later on. So Elizabeth Packard, she was one of the women that got committed multiple times.
Multiple times.
And
By her husband, boyfriend, guy walking down the street and didn't like how she was looking out the window at him.
We're going to talk about it.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
You ask questions too early. We'll get there. So she found when she was in there that there were a lot of other women, same boat that she was, just there for no good reason. So she realized the injustice. So she became the voice for those women when she was in there. So, but like you said, there's just any petty reason that men wanted to back then, they could send their women in.
It's just nuts.
It's absolutely nuts. So Elizabeth was born in Massachusetts up in the Northeast. In 1816, she was born to a Calvinist minister.
Okay.
Do you know anything about the Calvinists?
Nope.
So,
They wore Calvin Klein. I do know that.
obviously.
Like, that just goes without saying, though.
Yeah, obviously they were in
Yeah.
Calvin Klein the whole time. And while they were wearing their Calvin Kleins, they decided to become an offshoot of the Protestant religion.
Okay.
And amazingly enough, it was founded by a man named John Calvin. Crazy
this is
how that
where
works.
Calvin Klein came from, though.
Calvin Klein's brother, yeah.
Okay.
John Calvin's his brother.
That's what I thought.
Yes. And a lot of their beliefs, so it was kind of all over the place, but from what I understand, their beliefs are based on where most religions have a faith in God. The Calvinists view their belief in God more on facts than faith.
Okay.
And the one major teaching that they consider to be a fact, and this is what they believe about God, is that God predestined those who are going to be saved.
Oh, okay.
And they're the people that are predestined, and everyone else is damned to hell, so it doesn't matter about them.
That's why we need an insane asylum.
Yes.
There's no use for you.
Right. So basically, whatever they did didn't matter, but we're all chosen. We're predestined to be saved forever.
Okay.
So that was their major belief. There's a few other things. So this is what she was born into and raised in. She went to school at the Amherst Female Seminary, where she was given even more instruction in that religion. So this is what she was brought up in. Her family was raised in it. Her father was a minister, and she learned it also. So we fast forward all the way till she was 19.
Okay.
And she came down with a medical condition. And they called it back then brain fever. Do you know what brain fever is?
What, she get her period a little late in life?
No. It could have been
Was
a
it a
contributing
real
factor.
thing?
Well, it's a condition that you get when you have a high fever, headaches, and you're just generally out of it. That's what they called brain fever back then. They often blamed it on stress in people's lives.
You just walk around with a fever because you're stressed?
And I guess. So doctors were not super great back then.
What? Sounds like they're spot on.
And in women, they said a contributing factor for women was the fact that they wore their corset too tight.
I mean, Yeah, I can kind of see that part. The people would pass out. Women would pass out from that.
People debate that, but there's also people that say, yeah, that's probably true because it was so tight. It was probably adding to the woman's stress in their life, just the fact that they had to walk around with this thing.
Yeah, can't breathe.
Making them 10 sizes smaller than they were.
You can't get a deep breath, then yeah, I'm sure you're going to be walking around looking like you're out of it all the time.
So she was diagnosed with brain fever, and so someone that got diagnosed with brain fever, take a guess how they treated it back then.
I'm gonna guess you throw them into an insane asylum.
They would go into an asylum. Yep. And any ideas?
Let's see.
Think we're in the 1800s, so think about their
you would do
logic
electroshock therapy.
Mm-mm.
Bleed them.
Yep, that was one of the cures.
Woohoo!
They would bleed the person and make them vomit.
Oh, yes.
So basically, the brain fever was in their stomach lining, and they'd make them vomit it up.
Yeah, I've always heard that when your stomach hurts, you're going to get a fever.
Mm-hmm.
They're directly connected.
And then it seeps into your bloodstream, so you just bleed all that blood out.
The gut to the brain.
Brain fever's gone.
Yeah.
Now, we're not medical doctors, but
I think we have it.
I don't think we need to go to school to be a medical doctor because we've got it completely explained perfectly.
Yes.
So her father had her committed because she had brain fever, and she was there for 6 weeks. And after 6 weeks, she was declared healthy and released.
Okay.
6 weeks. And this was her first time in an asylum, obviously. And she came to the realization that all the things that went on there, all the tests, the bleeding, the making her vomit, that didn't help in the slightest.
No.
Amazingly. She was intelligent enough to realize that. But she realized that the only thing that made her feel better was basically the stress did contribute to how she was feeling. So basically it was like a 6-week vacation in there.
Yeah.
So that's why she felt better when she got out, because she got to relax away from her life for 6 weeks, basically.
She probably didn't have to wear a corset. She could breathe.
Yeah.
She didn't have to worry about just life in general.
Mm-hmm.
That makes sense.
So she came to that realization in there, especially even looking around at other women that had legit problems that were in there.
Yeah.
And she realized, hey, I just needed to rest for 6 weeks. She put up with the other things, obviously, but that 6 weeks of rest away from her family and stresses of the 1800s did her wonders. So she's 19 years old. She's an insane asylum veteran. And most 19-year-old women back then were married, so she starts to look for a man. So she's got this baggage of being a insane asylum veteran.
She should just put that on her resume to find a man. Hey, you get annoyed. You want to be petty. I mean, I'm cool with going in this place, so come on.
I was just thinking how funny it would be if they had like Tinder or any of the dating sites back then. And she had that on hers. Insane asylum veteran.
I am GTG for this. Come on.
But there were people that were interested. And crazy enough, it was another minister. 34-year-old minister. So 15 years her senior. Yeah. And his name.
Why not?
Why not? Crazy enough to do it. So his name was Theophilus Packard.
Theophilus.
And I refuse to call him Theophilus. So through this whole episode, I'm calling him Theo. You call him what you want, but I'm going with good old Theo. Is that another name for a pet?
Theophilus? It could be. It would have to be a really, really big pit bull.
That would work.
And then I would always call him Theophilus.
I'd still call him Theo.
And when he was being good, he'd be Theo. But when he was being bad, it would be Theophilus.
Theophilus.
See? It's perfect.
It works.
And he'd be big and all muscular. But then when you said his full name and he knew he was in trouble, he'd go all cute and put his ears back.
I feel like he would always be running around the house getting our dog Anish in trouble. Blaming everything on him. Just a throwback
these
to our
dog names. I love it.
Anish
And
Kapoor,
Anish
Stuart
Kapoor.
Semple episode.
Anish Kapoor would be say the full dog's name.
It's got to be the full one.
Yeah. Anywho.
So he was a Calvinist minister, and it was the norm back then to marry into the religion you were raised in, especially up in the Northeast, where it was just a tight-knit community. Everyone knew everybody. So she married into the Calvinist religion also, and it was kind of viewed as wrong if you didn't do it. So this was in 1839 and she got married. And they lived a normal life over the next 15 years. They had 6 children. Of course, none of them were hers. They belonged to her husband, Theo.
I mean, yeah. Look at how much work he did.
She had absolutely no rights to those children whatsoever.
Yeah.
She could raise them, feed them.
I bet you that after his stretch marks,
Mm-hmm.
maybe if you could understand how he would feel, those kids are his.
And she couldn't complain about it either, because if she complained that they were her kids or made that argument, she'd be thrown into the insane asylum. So back then, you weren't even allowed to think that way. It's insane.
So crazy.
So they moved away from the Northeast. They moved around the Midwest a little bit, and they settled into the state of Illinois in 1857. They traveled around with his ministry, preaching, setting up churches, doing
With the 6 kids.
with the 6 kids.
With his 6 kids.
With his 6 kids, not hers. His 6 kids. And so she was 34 years old at this point.
34 and 6 kids. Ugh.
She had been just traveling around the country doing her husband's work.
Bearing his
Bearing a seed.
offspring to fill the earth. Like, was her duty.
And so all this time of observing everything, hearing everything he had to say. Now, he was kind of a hard-headed person and just very black and white. Very much like her father was. So
Sounds like a fun guy.
I don't think she liked him very much, but you know, she was an insane asylum veteran, so you got to settle for what you get, I guess, back then.
Theophilus, you got to do.
Theo knew it and swooped right in and took her. So, like we talked about, back in Massachusetts, up in the Northeast, it was very tight-knit, close. Everybody just, you never questioned anything. It was just your life. You were born, you died, you believed the same thing, you thought the same thing, never questioned it. But she, at 34 years old, began to question the Calvinist church, her husband's teachings, the teachings of the church in general. So she was starting to think for herself.
Okay, well, you know,
Which
that's what
at that
happens.
point is very dangerous in the 1800s.
It's what happens when you are an insane asylum veteran.
You learn how to think. She was definitely a free thinker, like we're going to find out. So she took advantage of this and start to branch out and do things on her own. She didn't completely abandon the religion. She actually went out on her own and did some missionary work and taught people.
And Theo let her do this?
Well, he didn't like it.
Oh, okay.
But she was doing it. And then it got dangerous because when she was out, you know, talking with people in their Calvinist religion, or when she was out doing her missionary preaching work, she began to tell people about her issues with the religion, with the Calvinists, with things that her husband said.
So she is out on missionary work for
The Calvinists.
Calvinists, but she's also like, so she's like, hey, listen to this.
She basically was out there saying,
but I really don't like this.
She didn't, like I said, she didn't completely abandon it. There was a lot of things she believed in, but there was also things she's like, no, this isn't right.
This doesn't make any sense.
Yes.
Okay.
And she was telling people that.
So listen to this part of it.
Mm-hmm.
But this part over here, I don't like.
But I'm questioning this, yes.
Okay.
So this all got back to Theo.
Oh, man.
Yeah. Not a good...
Did he take his 6 kids and leave?
Well, he did not like it. He didn't like it. And so he began to reel her back in, take some of that freedom that he gave her away.
Oh.
And he became more controlling of her. He was already a controlling person because men were able to do that to women back then. But he became even more controlling. And when she questioned, you know, why are you doing this? He said it was because she was neglecting her family.
Okay.
Which she had absolutely no legal right to. But you're neglecting us. So
You're neglecting my children.
he made it seem like he was doing a nice thing. Hey, I could throw you in an asylum, but just come back and stop what you're doing. She fought it a little bit, and so then he begins to what we'll call petty gaslighting her.
Oh, God. Petty people are good at gaslighting.
So he obviously knew about her stint in the asylum. And so
how many years ago was that now? Now how old is she?
16 years back.
So he's like, oh, now I'm going to.
Now he's going to use it against her. So he began to tell her, wondering to her, well, maybe she was starting to become insane again, and maybe she'd have to go back into the insane asylum.
Oh.
Basically accusing her of going mental again. Mm-hmm. So he wanted her to stop what she was doing, just basically become a subservient housewife again. Otherwise we're going to send you in.
Yeah.
That's where he went. So got very petty with her. Instead of being a normal person, just said, do this or else.
Yeah. Well, that's what you could do back then, so why not?
And so we've already established she's a very free thinker.
Mm-hmm.
She liked to do things on her own. So this made her even more hard-headed about it and deliberate in her opposition of her husband and the Calvinists, the religion as a whole. Mm-hmm. So this completely pushed her away from it. Again, she still likes bits and pieces of it, but she's not 100% in anymore. Say that. So now she was starting to adopt and follow ideas from other religions, not just saying, I don't like this and this, but now she was taking bits and pieces from the other religions. Because remember, she went to school at the seminary, so she knew about them. So she was taking little bits and pieces and putting them into practice in her life.
So they're still married.
Oh, yeah.
And they're still living together, or are they separated?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. So she really is just
But she's doing all this behind his back.
Oh, okay. Okay, that's where I was getting confused.
Yeah.
Like,
so
how
she's
is
doing
she
all this
doing
behind his back still. I mean, obviously he's going to find out about it.
Well, yeah.
And
So she's living a double life.
She made sure that he's going to find out about it too. Like we're going to, you'll hear in a
double
second.
life, but she wants him to know.
Yes.
Okay.
She wants him to know that, hey, I'm not going to listen to you.
She
did not agree with the way that women were treated back then.
As she should not.
100%. So she began to take in ideas from universalism and spiritualism.
Okay. Oh.
So Houdini was not a fan. Call back to our Houdini episode.
Lots of callbacks in this one.
She actually did a seance where she
called Houdini's mom and actually talked to her.
Called her grandmother, close. Maybe Houdini's mom was there. I don't know.
Could be.
And then was telling her kids about it, and her husband found out about it, and he was not too happy. So Theo's finding out about all this, and he tries to get her to withdraw from their Bible class.
Okay.
He doesn't want her even going anymore because she's such a distraction. People are talking about her, talking about the family, talking about him.
Oh,
so
no.
He wants her completely just don't even come around.
Okay. Don't come to the house, or just don't come to the Bible study?
Don't go to the Bible studies. Don't talk to our children about it. Nothing. He wanted her to just completely be silent at this point.
Okay.
And that was after she had her conversation with her dad. It was actually her mother. I think I said grandmother before, but it was her mother. And so it was after that seance that he decided, yep, you're insane. You're sitting there telling me that you're talking to your dead mother. You're insane. Which,
yeah.
Not wrong, but yeah, probably came across in a very different way.
Yeah. I'm sure he was like, oh my word, this is the end. Now, did they believe in afterlife?
Mm-mm.
Okay, so they didn't. So that's why
they believed in hell and purgatory.
But not
not to be able to talk with people afterwards, right? That was spiritualism. It's a completely different thing. So he was quoted after this happened as saying, "Never before had she so persistently refused my will or wishes. She seems strangely determined to have her own way, and it must be that she is insane." It's so strange. She doesn't want to do everything that I tell her to do.
It's like she's her own person or something. What is happening in this world?
So what else could it be? She's insane.
She is insane. She has that fever again.
She's got
Let's bleed her.
Fever. Well, believe me, I think he would have if he could have gotten away with it. So it didn't stop her. She keeps talking. She's allowed to go to the church where they worship. She keeps talking to all the other parishioners that go and listen to her husband. And she actually gets a little bit petty about it at this point, which probably rightly so with the way she's being treated. She gets up in the middle of one of her husband's services and she makes an announcement, like right in the middle of the church. She gets up, stands up and says, "I'm going to the Methodist church across the street. If anybody wants to join me in worship over there, follow me over."
She is taking a hard stance here.
Hard stance. So that's a little petty thing to do. She'd been kind of not secretive about it, but kept it really on the down low. This was just like, hey, come follow me.
I'm going to guess something crazy happened before his sermon that made her ticked her off a little bit.
Probably.
So
I
she's like,
I didn't find anything out about that, but I
okay.
would guarantee that something crazy happened.
Okay, you gonna act like that?
I'll one-up you. I'll one-up you. As just reading about her personality, I could totally see that happening too.
I mean, how embarrassing for him, because this is his church.
People are talking about it. People are talking about him. He is the minister of this church. And his wife, hey, let's go worship at the church across the street. A Methodist church.
Anyone wants to join me?
So she literally just invited people to walk out and, hey, let's go over there.
That's pretty funny, though.
Yeah.
And he kind of sounds like he deserves it. But.
So you talked about divorce earlier.
Uh-huh.
And you probably think, well, why didn't they just get divorced and move on?
I don't think was that even a thing back then?
They both opposed it for the moral reasons within the religion. So they didn't, with the stigma that came along with that. But also because of the fact that she had no custody of her children, she would pretty much never see her kids anymore. So anybody that got divorced back then, kids. Right, his kids. Just so weird to say that. But yeah, anybody that got divorced back then, the women would lose. They had never got custody of their children at all, so they'd pretty much never see them. So women would just stay married to their husbands, no matter how they acted back then, to be able to see their kids and see them grow up. That was the choice they had to make back then.
So sad.
It is. So this went on for 3 years. All this kind of deviating from the church, making him look bad, and he had enough.
Okay.
And he was going to get her committed again to the insane asylum.
Oh.
So,
we knew this
in his
was
mind,
coming.
In his mind, he's got a pretty good reason for it. But he did it in a very petty way. He could have just said, hey, we're going to the insane asylum. Let's go.
Okay.
But he did it in a very petty, devious way. So he arranged for a doctor to come to his house and have her checked out.
I was hoping you were going to say in the middle of his sermon, he arranged for a doctor to come in and made her stand up. And the doctor in the middle of it proclaimed, "You are insane." And then they dragged her away.
When you hear this, that's probably a nicer way to do it.
Oh man. Okay.
Okay. So he has a doctor come to his house. And he knew his wife obviously is not going to want to go to an insane asylum. Probably not going to want to be checked out by a doctor.
She's
going to know what's
annoying.
happening at this point. Hey, my husband sent me here. I'm going to check you out to see if you're crazy.
Just listen to your husband.
So this doctor was a buddy of his, and he got him to pretend that he was a sewing machine salesman. So he comes to the door, and he's not, Theo's not home.
Okay.
And he pretends to be a sewing machine salesman. Just starts making chit-chat with her.
What's the point of this ruse?
You'll see. So he's there to sell the lady of the home a sewing machine. So he stayed in character the whole time as a sewing machine salesman, but he got her to complain to him about how controlling Theo was and how false the accusations were that he was claiming she was insane. So in their talk, he got her to admit all this to him. Just basically like she was talking to a friend.
What?
Who opens up to a person that comes to their house, first of all, like that?
Well, I mean, back then.
Yeah, maybe back then.
But also, what? I'm sorry, but what doctor is like, yes, this is a great plan?
It was, they all thought so differently back then. The women were thought of as just low citizens, like third class citizens. It didn't matter to them.
But it's so weird.
It's incredibly weird.
It's like something that you would see on some sitcom and you would be like, those jokers, that's never going to happen.
But it did.
What in the world?
So this sewing machine salesman doctor, who was a legit doctor, he went back to Theo, and right then and there, he's like, take her.
She's so crazy.
And the doctor agreed with him for various reasons, including a couple of very petty reasons. Mm-hmm. One is she refused to shake the guy's hand when he came to her house.
I don't know you. Why am I going to shake your hand?
But again, back then, everybody was friendly with each other. You introduce yourself, you shake hands. God. So because she refused to shake his hand, that was one of the reasons she was insane. Mm-hmm. And because she was older than 40. Oh. Over 40 doesn't shake hands. Yep, all the check marks for an insane person.
I'm picturing he has this big clipboard, and the only two things on there are refuses to shake hands over 40.
No, they checked them off.
He just put these big check marks like, oh, I
Takes
got
a
to get
big-
back to Theo.
What's that big red marker for? Don't worry about it. Let's just talk about this sewing machine.
Tell me more about Theo.
So, very petty way that he got her committed. And it's even pettier when he gets her taken away because he never told her that this all happened. He kept this a secret from her.
Well, how do you, hey.
I mean, yeah, how do you have that conversation?
Remember Ralph? You know?
Remember the guy you almost bought a sewing machine from?
You know who I'm talking about, huh?
Surprise, he's a doctor.
I know all your secrets now, refusing to shake hands. And when did you turn 40?
Were you going to tell me about this? Forget the fact that you're getting people away from my church. You turned 40 without telling me?
Every time I go to a doctor's office, I'm going to be like, hey, let me throw something by you. You think you could do this for me? I have this friend. Can you go to their house and try to sell them? And I'll just, I feel like I should stick with a sewing machine. Can you go and just talk to them? And
I think to change it up, you could probably do like a vacuum cleaner maybe.
no, people aren't going to let people in with vacuum cleaners.
But they will for sewing machines?
Yes, it's different. It's unique. Whoever hears of that anymore. Remember, the people used to go around to houses and be like, "Oh, just let me in. Just let me clean one of your couch cushions. You'll see this vacuum cleaner is so great." But a sewing machine? If somebody was like, "Hey, I'm here to sell you a sewing machine," I'd be like, "A sewing machine?" It would make me pause instead of just being like, "No, get out of here. I don't want your stupid vacuum." I'd be like, "Wait, sewing machine?"
But that's how people made clothes back then. That was like the vacuum cleaner of the 1800s.
I know. I'm saying now I would stick with it for my ruse.
Just because it's so ridiculous.
Yes. Sewing machine. It would catch their attention. And that's how this doctor that I'm going to definitely rope into this is going to get into this person's house. Got some people I need to put away into insane asylums.
Tell me how that goes.
It's too bad when I went to the urgent care place, I didn't grab her. She was pretty nice. I bet you're going to talk her into it. Anyway,
Would be a
continue.
funny thing. All right, so we're going to continue. So he carried on as normal, didn't tell his wife. Theo's just doing his thing. And then one morning, early in the morning, a county sheriff with 2 doctors come, barging into the house. Just picture him like with a big thing. What's that thing called?
Gurney?
Where they just smash the door in.
Oh, and not, no, oh God. It's on the tip of my brain. Like what they would use to, take down gates on castles.
I just picture 2 doctors and a sheriff doing that to their front door. Just so they come in, and the doctors are checking Elizabeth out. And according to Elizabeth, each doctor felt my pulse, and without asking a single question, both pronounced me insane. So they took her pulse. Ooh, that's an insane pulse. And she was gone. 1800s are such a wild time.
She's got 3 guys just smashing into her house. So obviously your heart rate's going to be like, what is happening? Wow. Look at how fast her heart rate is.
She is crazy.
These crazy people and it's so weird. Every place we go, their heart rate's through the roof. There's some correlation with insane people and high heart rate.
But think about the kids that are watching all this too.
And thinking
The kids are in the
this is
house
normal?
watching this, and this is just
life
for them back then.
No,
If only we could go back in time and live it.
no, thank you.
Terrible time. So this time she goes to the Illinois Hospital for the Insane in Jacksonville, Illinois.
Oh.
I never knew there was a Jacksonville, Illinois, but there was a insane asylum there. And again, it was all completely legal. Didn't like it how she was acting, so he sends her away. Super petty.
He probably ran back to that checklist and added the high heart rate.
So she was in this insane asylum, and during her time there, she was monitored by a doctor, Dr. Andrew McFarland. Dr. McFarland, whom she says knew she was sane. There was nothing wrong with her. But to quote her, he depended on men like her husband for his business.
Obviously.
So he just did it for the money. He would take in whoever because people were willing to pay it. Even though he knew there was nothing wrong with her, it was all about the money.
Sounds
like
about
most
right.
doctors are anyways.
Yeah.
They'll take the money. They'll say whatever you want. And she found out that as she was in there and was talking with people, some of the women that were in there, and this was an overflowing insane asylum with women. Like they had more there than rooms and beds.
I mean, I'm assuming, again, all high heart rates, all over 40, and refuse to shake hands.
Well, there's more to add to the checklist.
Oh.
There were some there that were committed for reading novels. They were reading books. And their husband said, you can't get smart. You're going to an asylum.
You do not get educated when you're a woman.
They were there for, quote, hard study. So they were learning. And insane behavior during their change of life. So, period, menopause, you're gone.
I'd love to see a man going through menopause. I'd love to see a man just have their period.
They didn't need to because they just send the woman away when they threatened them with it. Don't talk to me like that. Come on, take her.
Everybody always talks about, I'd like to see you give birth. Oh, no, I would just like to see a man go through a period. Just one. I would like to see them the week before get bloated for no reason. Gain 5 pounds somehow. Like, what is happening? I don't even know. The cramping. Why am I cramping? What? Am I dying? No, it's just your body. That's it. It's your body revolting against you.
And it was reason for committal. In the 1800s.
So insane.
That's where she was, an insane asylum. Maybe you're crazy.
I am crazy. This is making me crazy.
So there were some medical notes that were drawn up by doctors and physicians talking about, some research they did on this facility. There was a 20-year-old woman, again, who spent too much time in serious reading that was there, and a 30-year-old wife who dared to express, quote, great distaste for her husband. And those...
So wait, if she had just said distaste?
Not great. If she just I'm not a huge fan of him.
He's distasteful. He's greatly distasteful.
That's
it. You're out of here.
And so these were two of the people that they were subjected to the latest and greatest treatment at this time in this insane asylum to cure female insanity.
Is it the electrocution now?
They got a clitoridectomy.
Oh, God.
They were under the impression and believed it as a fact that the woman's sexual organs caused their madness.
Yes.
So cutting them off would make them calm and normal and sane.
Oh, my God.
This is going to blow you away. Doctors at that point, so forget the fact that it's probably very painful for the women, and they're obviously going to be subdued after this and just very out of it. Doctors claimed a 70% success rate that women became uninsane after this.
What part of that, like right after?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I'm sedated from surgery. You're cured.
They also, other treatments were removal of the ovaries, injection of ice water inside, quote, intimate orifices, and the application of leeches and caustics to the genitals.
So basically they're just torturing these women
to make them sane. Basically to submit to saying, okay, I'll be good.
Oh my God.
That's what went on in these insane asylums and why she was like, yeah, this is not right. And she's already a very outspoken woman for the time. So she's like, yeah, this is not good.
What in the world?
Yeah. Women were chloroformed, drugged, dragged on the floor by their hair on the way to solitary confinement, beaten, placed in straitjackets, and waterboarded.
Ooh.
And they were quoted as being told, the beatings will continue until morale improves.
Oh, yes. Beat into submission.
They were beating them into submission. Yep.
It's lovely.
And that's what the husbands wanted. They wanted their women to come out just quiet, Just
Oh,
cook all day long.
I'd come out real quiet.
How would you not be furious after you came out of there?
Oh, no, I'd come out real quiet. I'd come out so quiet that you'd be like, oh, I messed up. She's going to kill me.
Well, you couldn't have any sort of emotion about this. Expressions of emotion by the women were frowned upon and deemed evidence of insanity. So you had to be emotionless.
I can do emotionless.
One attendant told a resident that, quote, "You mustn't cry. You're getting worse. You can't go home until you stop fretting."
We only cut off your...
We took your ovaries. Don't cry.
Ovaries. We only put leeches on your crotch. We only put ice water up in your vagina. What's your problem? Stop crying.
Stop fretting.
These women coming in here, they're getting more insane. I don't know why. Put them in some straight jackets and waterboard them. These are all great ideas on how to
Super
make
great
people
ideas.
not be insane.
One psychiatrist wrote that expressing a yearning to go home, so any woman in there that said, "I just really want to go home,"
Oh.
that was always a suspicious circumstance and always a sufficient warrant for delay and evidence of a lingering spark of a disease. So just wanting to go home and be around their family and kids, if they said, I want to go home.
What the frick? So if you have normal, natural
reactions.
feelings.
Men at that time did not want women to have feelings at all. That's what they were looking for in a woman. So you would not have done well back then.
I would not have
You
done
would be
well.
in there with Elizabeth.
I would be. Her and me would be best friends, though, and we would take this place down.
Well, she started to. So she spent 3 years there. And she even got told...
3 years?
3 years.
I almost spit my tea out.
3 years. And she even got told by the doctors and physicians in there, just pretend to agree that you're insane. Just pretend and things will go better for you.
No.
But she would not do it.
I would not have
She
either.
refused. They told her to change her religious views back to what her husband preached and agree with him. Still a hard no. And so when she was still in a disagreement with all these physicians, they transferred her to an even worse place. They transferred her to the 8th ward for the violent and hopelessly insane. This is where all the real crazies went. Mostly real crazy. There were some women in there like her, but most of these people were legit crazy.
Okay.
And so that's where they sent her. And she was attacked and harassed by patients, doctors, physicians every day in there. And she witnessed firsthand how people were physically and mentally abused by the people that worked in the hospital there. So obviously the conditions were terrible, even worse than where she came from. And so this is where she started actually writing down her thoughts and experiences, the things that she saw, and she turned these later into books. And
I don't understand how was she allowed to write in there.
She found scraps of paper and would just jot them down. Well,
educated women.
She was actually given a lot of freedom as she went on. She got keys to places that inmates shouldn't have had.
Well, because she's not insane.
Right. And they realized that. But she also, showed what a good person she was, because she kept her sanity by cleaning every day. She kept her cell or room, wherever she was, clean, which was just something that people didn't do in there. She even cleaned the patients, because patients didn't get cleaned. They just, that was part of the torture, I guess. She bathed every single one of them by hand.
Aww.
When she first got there, and washed and combed their hair. And this is crazy. In the beginning, when she first got there, it took 1 day to wash each woman because they had so much built up dirt and grime on them.
Ugh.
It took her a whole day to get them clean.
So disgusting.
And they would just walk through pools of urine, feces. It would all over the walls. And some of these people, like I said, were really legitimate crazy. So she worked to actually try to, treat them like a human and try to help them.
What?
Amazing. And so because the staff saw her doing this and realized, she probably doesn't belong here, she was starting to be given freedoms. And like I said, she was given keys to places. So that's what enabled her to be able to talk to people, write notes, take some of the stuff out of the 8th ward where she was.
Okay.
So in 1863, after 3 years in this place, she was released as, quote, uncured.
They couldn't even thrown her a bone and been like, hey, dude, she's not insane.
Nope.
You're dumb and petty.
She was deemed incurable, and they wanted to make room for, quote, curable women.
Oh, maybe that was their way of getting her out of
I think
there
they did it that way to save face,
Mm.
so that they could keep making money.
Yeah.
But yeah, they said that she was incurable. She had no hope, basically. And that, they were just making room for women to be there that would say and make them look successful. And she obviously was not doing that. She wasn't going to go out and speak their praise.
Yeah.
So, like you said, they saved face.
Did women go out and speak the praise, though?
I guess if they did what they told them to do, I guess that was their way of saying, yep, that works.
They beat me into submission,
But
guys.
But part of the reason that she got out is her son was now 21. And so at that when their child turns 21, they have legal authority over their parents to make decisions for them.
What, so over their mother, you mean?
Make decisions for their parents. Yeah, mother or father.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That's weird.
Well, like if they're in a situation like that in an asylum.
Oh, okay.
So, hey, I'm 21 I'm a legal adult. I'm a male. I can decide if I want her out. So he was able to convince his father that it was the right thing to do to get her out and allow her to come home.
It's so sad that your own kid has to be like, hey, can you let mom out of the insane asylum?
Right. And she knew Theo. She knew him well. They'd been married a long time. And so she actually didn't even want to go home. She was actually scared that he was going to send her somewhere else or treat her even worse or get her locked up somewhere. But she did. She went back home. She wanted to see her children. And she went back to a disaster because men back then obviously didn't do anything.
So like the house was disgusting.
Her daughter, who was now 14, so when she was 11, when she went in, she was basically the person in charge of the house, an 11-year-old girl.
You do all the cleaning, all the cooking.
Cleaning, cooking, taking care of the children. So it was disgusting and disastrous, disorganized, just gross. So that's what she came home to because back then the men didn't do housework.
Yeah. Yeah, let's just live in filth instead. This makes sense.
I can only imagine what Theo did, to berate this 11-year-old kid who had no idea how to clean.
Word.
But she was right. She, I said she was kind of worried about what her husband was going to do. She had every right to worry about that, and she knew him very well because he had locked everything in the house. All the cabinets, all the doors, everything had a lock on it, and she had to ask him even just to be able to get food. He had to go unlock the cabinet, give her what she wanted, portion it out for her.
I'd be getting a hammer and breaking all these locks off of everything.
Well, she was trying to play it cool a little bit. She didn't. She was legitimately scared of him and what was going to happen. So he gets even pettier. If you think locking the cabinets is petty, he gets even pettier and says, "Wait, I don't have to lock all these things. I'll just lock her."
Oh my God.
So he locks her into a nursery. He boards up all the windows, nails them shut, so there's no light going in the house, and locks the door from the outside. So her worst fear is coming true.
She's a prisoner all over again.
She's a prisoner in her own house. So she never comes out. She's obviously has nowhere to go to the bathroom in there. She has a bucket, and this is the 1800s, so there central heating, air conditioning doesn't exist. So you're in the Midwest up there in Illinois, so it gets cool. So she has no fireplace in the bedroom. She's got the clothes that she's wearing, and that's it. So she's cold, just locked up in a bedroom. No sunlight, given probably a meal or two a day. Still can't see her kids.
What was his purpose of doing this? Just for control?
Funny you asked that.
Okay.
He didn't want her interfering because he was trying to arrange to have her locked up in a new asylum.
Oh.
So he's just like, well, we'll lock her in the nursery and we'll get this taken care of and get her taken away. Because he knew the damage that she could do. Mm-hmm. So he just played it safe and locked her away.
Wow.
Mm-hmm. Petty
And sadistic.
Yes.
Like, what a terrible human being.
He's a minister, so he's good.
Oh, yeah. I love God, so I'm great. I can do whatever I want. I prayed the other day, so I'm good.
So I'm okay to lock my wife in a room.
I can do the opposite of what the Bible actually says.
Gives him
it's
legal right.
Because I'm a minister.
Pretty easy for us to see who's actually insane in this situation. But So eventually she was able to get just enough of the board off the window and be able to throw a letter out that her neighbor got. Basically telling the neighbor, hey, I'm a prisoner in my house. You need to do something.
My God, this is actually like Rosemary's Baby.
Right.
That's like a scene from the movie. She doesn't get the board off, but she like.
Right. Well, she didn't get the board off. It's just enough to be able to
she
get a
like
note
crumpled
out there.
this letter and she threw it across to her neighbor.
And so the neighbor gets it, goes to a judge, and let the judge know what was happening. And this judge's name was Judge Charles Starr. So
Is he a star?
He helped her. He does help her.
Okay.
He actually issued a writ of habeas corpus to Theo.
Okay.
So he had to go before the judge with Elizabeth and explain why he had to lock her up and explain all the details about it. So, yep, you've got a prisoner, but you've got to explain why.
Pray tell, what were his reasons?
He says that he allowed her all the liberty compatible with her welfare and safety due to her insanity. So basically, she's got a place to sleep. She's got a place to go to the bathroom. I feed her, but she's insane, so that's all she can have.
Yeah. Because that's what you do with insane people in the 1800s.
But this judge was a sane person. He ruled it was illegal and that he had to let her go.
Wow.
But,
But he's a man.
Yeah.
So I'm surprised that he did that.
Yeah. But he saw the wrong in it. They still did have some sort of law and order back then. You couldn't just do crazy things like that. You could send him to an insane asylum, but you can't lock him in your house. Not that there's much difference.
You can send him to an insane asylum to have their to have them tortured into submission, but don't you lock them in a bedroom in your house.
So he said, well, we can't have you lock her up. That's wrong. You're not allowed to do that. So Theo says, well, I'm going to send her to an asylum then. I'm going to have her committed. He says, well, not so fast. We're going to have a trial for it.
Wow.
So she became the first woman to have a trial to see if she was actually mentally insane or not and to see if she should go there. So Judge Starr, hero of the day.
Yeah, he is a star.
He ruled that there would be a trial. And so it was a 5-day trial in 1864.
Let me guess, there was an all-man jury.
I don't know if it was who was on the jury, who made it up.
Well, juries usually were only men. Only white men.
Right. Back then. Yeah. That's true. I didn't think about that. But yeah, so it had to have been all men. But so there were doctors that testified against her and for her. And the doctors that testified against her, they
had their checklist.
Testified that she refused 100% to submit to her husband and showed just how insane she was and that she belonged in an asylum. Again, mostly because of she wouldn't believe the religion 100%. So there's this doctor, Dr. J.W. Brown. He testified that she had described her husband as wishing that the despotism of man may prevail over the wife. So he was basically she said it's okay that he can basically be in charge of me. But it was during their discussion of religion that he had not the slightest difficulty in concluding that she was hopelessly insane. So again, religion. She's insane because she does not agree with her husband.
So weird.
She thinks differently. Nope, not going to allow that. This Dr. Brown continued. He said he found fault that Mr. Packard he said that Elizabeth found fault that Mr. Packard would not discuss their points of difference in religion in an open, manly way instead of going around and denouncing her as crazy to her friends and to the church. She had a great aversion to being called insane. Before I got through the conversation, she exhibited a great dislike to me. So because she didn't like him and made it very obvious, she was insane.
She doesn't like to be called insane. So she's insane.
Right. So all because she didn't like him. It's as petty as the whole, hey, you didn't shake my hand, you're insane. You don't like me, you're insane.
Who's insane, Mr. Go get a doctor to pretend they're a freaking salesman?
Men were insane back then. Men were crazy. Abijah Dole, who is the husband of Theo's sister, testified that he knew Elizabeth had become disoriented because she told him that she no longer wished to live with Reverend Packard.
Oh, how dare she?
Dole also testified that Elizabeth had requested a letter terminating her membership in her husband's church. Was that an indication of insanity, her lawyer asked? Dole replied, she wouldn't leave the church unless she was insane.
Oh, yeah. Yep. That's the only reason.
So they're taking all these ideologies of people that lived in the Northeast, where that's just what you did. You were in your religion, born, raised, died in your religion, and taking all that and applying it, as a general rule everywhere. So because this trial was in Illinois, and then Sybil Dole, who was which was Theo's sister, she testified against Elizabeth. She said she accused Dr. Packard of depriving her of her rights of conscience, that he would not allow her to think for herself on religious questions because they differed on these topics. And finally, a certificate from the Illinois State Hospital was read, which stated that she was discharged because she could not be cured. So they're piling
it's coming back to bite her in the butt.
So they're piling up all this evidence against her. It's pretty telling back then when your family's testifying against you, which is what they were doing. They're basically, yeah, she's crazy.
Yeah, but look at how poorly she's been treated this whole time.
But obviously they're going to...
It's not us driving her insane or anything. I only put her in an insane asylum for 3 years. Right.
But her lawyer did find some people to testify for her. There was a couple doctors who compared to how she thought, and this was acting like other women in Europe at the time, who actually were able to say what they wanted about their religious beliefs and didn't have to follow their husband. So there was precedent in Europe that hadn't made it to the United States yet. So they pointed that out. And the final witness for her was a Dr. Duncanson, and he was a physician and a theologian. And he interviewed Elizabeth, and he testified that he had conversed with her for 3 hours. And while he wasn't necessarily in agreement with all her religious beliefs, he said, "I do not call people insane because they differ with me. I pronounce her a sane woman and wish we had a nation of such women." So he probably got the ire of every man in that courtroom.
Oh, I'm sure.
When they probably looked at him and their jaws dropped to the ground.
An educated woman? What is this man thinking? How can we control them then?
But that's the bottom line. You don't call people insane because they differ with you.
Yeah.
But people didn't believe that back then.
Sounds like a good reminder for today as well.
Exactly. I did think about that. So on the 5th day, went to the jury, and her fate was in the jury's hands. So how long do you think the jury deliberated?
God, probably like 10 minutes, and then they were like, no, she's insane.
7 minutes.
I was very close.
They came back with a decision in 7 minutes and found her not insane.
Wow.
And she was free to go. So 7 minutes, they were like, yep, that's crazy talk. She's perfectly sane.
Maybe there was some women on this jury, because I can't imagine men being like... I don't
think they were allowed back then.
We're going to have to look that up. I mean, that's what I've always said. It was supposed to be by peer, quote unquote peers, but it was always men, right? White men. Yeah. Apparently, white men are everyone's peers. I guess we can
check, but it would seem to be logical that it was all men on the jury back then. So Theo couldn't believe it, but he already kind of had a hunch this was going to happen. So he had already packed everything up and moved back to Massachusetts. He didn't even stay around till the end of the trial. He packed her clothes, basically everything in the house, took the kids and moved back to Massachusetts. And again, 100% legal. Left her with nothing.
Nice.
Not even a pair of socks.
These poor kids. So basically, he's not only torturing his wife, but he is making his kids grow up without a mother because he's being petty and
they have her clothes.
A male chauvinist.
They can pretend she's there, dress up a mannequin because they have her clothes now.
I'm sure that would be against what he likes too.
I feel like that's what he would do. This is your new mother now.
She has no feelings or emotions
She always
whatsoever.
agrees with me. She has no emotion. Perfect.
Weird.
Yeah. But so she has nothing right now. She won her case, but she has absolutely nothing. But she made the most of it, turned her life around, and she spent the next 30 years working for women's rights and to change the asylum laws of her time. And she actually got a lot of things accomplished over those 30 years. And not just Illinois, but all over the country, actually. She even got into the Supreme Court and got them to make some laws.
That's pretty cool.
Based on some of the things, based on the writings, actually, that she had gotten from inside the asylum. So due to the efforts of her and influence of her books, 34 bills were passed in state legislatures, including in Illinois, which required a jury trial before a person could be committed to an asylum for a man or a woman. So she got that changed in the state. And she even I don't know if you want to call it petty, but maybe it was. She even went back to Massachusetts where her husband was now. They never got divorced. They stayed legally married the whole time, but they were obviously never got back together. But they never divorced the whole time until they died. So they stayed legally married. But she went back to Massachusetts, and they got it set so that she had a law passed so that there had to be independent teams that went to the asylums and basically watchdogs, just report on how things were in there.
That's awesome, though.
To prevent all the things that happened to her from continuing to happen to other women. And then in 1869, she actually got custody of her 3 youngest children.
Wow.
Which is rare for that time.
Especially for an insane woman.
For an insane woman got custody of her 3 youngest children. And poor Theo, he ended up homeless, penniless, and childless.
Oh.
And she had a home, property, and children. So what goes around
it's like
comes around.
Karma came around to bite him in the butt again.
And she actually outlived him. She lived another 5 or 6 years after him. I'm sure the will of just wanting to continue to have things changed because of how she was treated by him probably kept her going. And so that's the story of Elizabeth Packard and her petty husband and basically petty men that lived at that time, and how she championed for married women and the rights of the mentally insane and mentally sane, actually.
Well, yeah. People not actually crazy.
Yeah.
What an incredible story.
Yeah. I thought it was a good story. Plus there was petty in there. There was petty gaslighting.
I mean, really insane stuff. Insane petty. This is insane petty.
But at that time, for a woman to be able to basically take on the establishment of just established law and order of how things were back then, that's a pretty amazing thing she did.
That is pretty amazing. Well, it's amazing that she came out of that situation.
Well, it shows what you can do when you go through a difficult time like that, to be able to turn her life around. Basically walk out of an insane asylum and locked in your house to being basically, yep, you're okay. You can continue to live normal, but not have anything, and get to the point where she's working with the Supreme Court on passing laws. It shows how a person can pretty much change how things are going for them.
Yeah.
No matter how bad it is.
That's pretty incredible.
Yep.
Pretty incredible person.
She is. I thought it was a pretty good story. Needed to be told, and we needed to laugh about some of it.
Oh, yeah. Like we always do.
Of course. So we're going to go to the petty round table, and I'm guarantee you've got some good thoughts. I can see your brain churning. Got a lot of things you want to say, so let's go to the petty round table, and you can let me know what you think about what we just talked about more.
All right, let's go.
So we made it to the petty round table. I talked you up a lot, that you have so many ideas.
I really don't feel like there's nothing is coming to my head of what she could have done to him, because she was in such a bad spot. Like, there was nothing she could do to him because he was locking her in a room or throwing her in the insane asylum. So it's like she didn't even get a chance to do anything back to him. I mean, the one thing that she did that was slightly petty, which was, hey, come to the Methodist church with me, got her in trouble. So I don't feel like I can sit here and be like, well, she could have done this, but really, could she? Yeah, she could have, but it would have just gone like so poorly for her. I feel like her getting back at him was getting out and doing exactly what she did. I mean,
getting all the laws passed.
Yeah, getting those laws
regulations
passed. Her custody of her kids back, owning property, like showing him, look at what women can actually do. You dumb chauvinist. Like, here you go. This is what's going on. Like, she did it all for us. Like, there's nothing that we can give her, say, oh, she could have done this so much better, because she did it so good. So I don't want to like sit here and be like, she could have done this, because I don't want to take away from the fact that she did such amazing things for the time period that she lived in. And like, I don't want to take that away from her.
It's tough to top what she actually did. I would say not necessarily something that she could do petty to him, but it would have been, I mean, Theo got what was coming to him. Yeah. He ended up, no money, no house, nothing. Obviously his kids didn't like him.
Yeah.
I mean, we didn't read that, but put 2 and 2 together. Who's going to like their father after they put them through that?
Yeah. Man live without their mom.
So it's tough to say you're going to be able to give him anything worse, but it would have been justice, I think, for the judge after he told her, okay, you're free. You're not insane. After the jury came back, if I was that judge, I would have told Theo that you're no longer allowed to be a Calvinist preacher. You can still be a Calvinist, but you're not going to be the preacher of your church. And I would have set up him as a custodian in the 8th ward of that insane asylum. And he was the one that would have had to bathe all these women, clean the feces off the wall, clean them.
I mean, I would think that
just
he would,
as a punishment for him sending his wife in there. I don't think it would have gotten through to him.
He would have had to go through what she went through. If you're going to send him in there for anything, okay,
I just want him to take care of all these, just basically see how terrible it is in there, just to reinforce to him what a terrible thing it was that he put his wife through.
Then he would have to go through what she went through. That's the only way. He's not gonna. He obviously doesn't feel like women were.
But I feel like being the minister of that church was his whole life and what he revolved everything around. So if someone told him, "Hey, you can't do that anymore. You're gonna go be a janitor in the 8th ward of the crazy part of the insane asylum," I don't know. I think that would have hurt him a little bit.
I think he would have just abused the women, and he would have just been mean to him.
Maybe.
I think he would have to go through, because I was thinking that, like, make him go through what she went through. But I just the kind of person that she seemed like she was, I don't think she would be like, man, I'm going to make you go through what I'm going through. That's why I was like, I'm going to give her that. She showed him. Taking away the church, I like that. If you're going to act like this,
you have no right to be
you have
leading
no
a church
right
and teaching
to be,
people how to act.
Yeah.
But again, that was normal back then. So did they really see it as any? Did his churchgoers really see it as out of the ordinary?
I mean, if you're, I don't know what
how many other people in that church had their wives committed or threatened them and said, "Hey, if you do something like she's doing, you're going there too."
Yeah, I'm sure they all did, because they're following his example. Like, that's normal for them. But I don't know anything about that religion, so I don't know if they like preached, what the Bible says. Like,
right.
Could you imagine Jesus doing that? Could you imagine Jesus teaching or treating his disciples like that? Like, if you're a minister, you're a minister. You're not lording it over people. So if he was up there, like, kind of teaching that kind of stuff and then doing the complete opposite, like you said, I think taking that away from him.
That probably would have hurt him the worst, not being able to get up there. Because I think he got, from what I read about him, it sounded like that was his whole life. And that's what he got all of his fulfillment out of. Not necessarily even his family or his wife, but being the minister of that church and doing everything for the church.
Yeah, so that would be a really good punishment then. I agree with you there. Take that away. If you can't even treat your family right, then no.
And then maybe he has to go to that Methodist church that his wife wanted to go to. He has to go and sit and listen to those sermons.
Okay, that's pretty funny. I like that.
Maybe being on a seance.
He has to talk to her dead mom.
And if he doesn't sell it good, then he goes to the insane asylum.
And then she gets to hire a doctor or get a doctor friend to come in.
We're rolling now.
Pitch him a idea. Hey, so what do you think about Elizabeth? Huh?
So a sewing machine for a woman, what would have been the equivalent for someone coming and selling something to a man back then?
Well, he's a preacher, so I'm just going to say Bible salesman. Yeah. That was a thing back then, too.
So he would have a Bible salesman coming. Wow, Bible salesman coming to me. I can have the best Bible in the whole church. And then, lo and behold, he's gone.
It's going to be a bedazzled one. Look at this. Ooh, and that's how he gets in.
We got there a little bit.
Yeah, a little bit.
But yeah,
but I think I was so like just floored at what this poor woman had to go through, and that she was still so incredible. I always find people like that just incredible people, because I always like to think if I was going through something like this, I would do that and I'd be resilient and I'd be like, oh yeah, I'm going to show the world. But I mean, unless you go through it, I guess you would never know. But still, it's like you never know how you're going to react to a situation. So when you have someone like that to come out like she did,
and I think it's
amazing.
different today than back then, because back then, I mean, what did you have to lose back then? I mean, children, yes, but you just had so few rights as a woman to be able to stand up like she did. You may as well go for it. I mean, easier said than done, like you just said, but because obviously that's not what women did. I'm sure a lot of them were thinking that.
Yeah.
But like you said, it's a different thing to be able to actually say it and do it and act the part like she did.
It's incredible when you think about like just all those women like that, like how far we've come. And yet how much farther we have to go. It's pretty incredible when you think about it. Like, how long have people in general just been fighting for like their rights? And we're still, that was almost, what, 80 years ago now from when she did it?
150?
No, I mean,
it was 1860s.
Oh yeah, so it was 1860s. I was thinking,
so yeah, 160 years.
Yeah, and we're still going for it.
And women still don't have all the rights that men do,
which is incredible.
Rights, but as far as equality,
yeah, definitely equality. I mean, the equality in pay. You got all sorts of stuff that you can see. It's incredible that we still are after that many years. But thank goodness there was people like her who kind of led the way.
It's like we were talking about on the way here. You can look back at that and be like, man, I'm thankful we don't have to go, well, for you don't have to go through that. You don't have to worry about getting shipped off to an insane asylum and all those things that women had to go through back then. You don't have to be this subservient person that just sits at home and does nothing. But
I would have just lived in an insane asylum then.
Never would have left. Committed yourself.
I'm just going to get this over with.
Don't even bother. I'm out of here. But it makes you appreciate how far, like you said, appreciate how far it's come. But at the same time, there's still a lot more where things could be a lot more equal with men and women. And they still don't get treated as fairly. But
what are you going to do except for sit here and have a podcast about it?
And then in 150 years, they'll be talking about all the great strides that women made today.
My God.
And then they'll still be complaining about how there's not equal.
I was going to say, I hope by then they'll at least be equal.
Either that or they'll have more rights and men will be complaining in 150 years.
God.
Wow, we're not equal to women. What do we have to do?
I feel like some men already do that.
They do.
They do.
They belong in the 1800s. They'd be much happier.
All right. So now we got to go to where people can reach us.
Just go to our website, letstalkpetty.com.
Yes. I say we say that every single time.
But I will say that we have to let them know about Twitter because that's where we're the most active.
We are the most active on Twitter.
Which is what?
Twitter is going to be Petty Talk Pod.
All one word. Don't spell it in British.
It's hard to spell in British.
If you spell it in British, you'll get the wrong account, and it's not pretty. But just go to our website, letstalkpetty.com. There's links to everything there. There's links to episodes. There's a link to our merch. There's links to share it with a friend, which we'd love for you to do. Share. Share.
Tell everyone.
Tell Cher, too. Share it with Cher. That's our new hashtag. Share it with Cher. Maybe she will finally see that if everybody just goes out and makes a tweet and hashtags it, share with Cher.
Everyone will know about our podcast.
Cher will finally find out about it, and we can finally retire this podcast.
Yep.
But we will have another episode next week. Kate has one. It's going to be amazing.
As always.
And we're looking forward to that. So we'll talk to you next week.
See you then. Thanks for listening. Please be sure and give our show a review wherever you listen to your podcasts. And be sure to follow and subscribe so you don't miss an episode.